Hello guys, this is Joe from JC Design and welcome to a new Photoshop tutorial. In today's lesson I'm going to be covering the transform tool and the scale tool. Well, the scale tool is kind of part of the transform tool. So what I'm going to do quickly is I'm going to make a new document by pressing Ctrl and N. And then you've got all your various different parameters here for the document. I'm just going to go on click down on the custom tab here and then go to international paper. Make an A4 document and just have it a 300 resolution. And then we create a new document. We'll just kind of make that full screen. Oops, sorry. If you keep pressing F, it will cycle through the different kind of screen options. So what I want is I want that one with the tools at the side. So the transform tool is a pretty easy tool to use, but it is quite valuable to Photoshop because there's a lot of things in the transform tool that will kind of enable you to manipulate your pictures and scale them up and down and kind of warp them and change them and make them look amazing. So I'm just going to show you the basics with a simple shape. I was planning on doing this this tutorial with a photo, but for now I'll just show you with a simple shape, and then I'll show you how you can apply it to a picture. Maybe some of the techniques I'll show you now. So what we'll do is we'll make a shape. We'll go down to the shape tool here. And we'll change the fill to red so everybody can see what I'm doing, and then we'll just make a square. So now we have a square. So we have the background layer, which is here, and we have the rectangle, which is above the background. Pretty basic. I'm guessing you guys already know that. So if you want to use the transform tool, you can, if you want, go into edit and then go down to transform path and then go to scale, and this will enable you to transform whatever you want. The transform tool works specifically on specific layers. So say for example I had another rectangle, so we'll duplicate the rectangle by right clicking on the layer and then duplicate layer. Just click OK on that, and now I have two rectangles. You can't see them because they're on top of each other, so I'll select the top one and just pull it off. So now we have two. The transform tool works specifically for specific layers. So what I'm talking about is the transform tool. If I was selected on this layer, I select the transform tool on that layer. If I was selected on that layer, I select the transform tool on that layer. So what this means is that you can manipulate certain parts of your image or your document or whatever you're working on. So for example, say I wanted to make this bigger. You click the layer, and then the shortcut for the transform tool is Control and T. I think it would be Command and T on a Mac, but I'm using a PC at the moment, so hit Control and T, and this will bring up the parameters box for your transform tool. You can change all the parameters up here, but being a designer, I just prefer to do everything by eye sometimes. But a good thing within CS6 is that it will bring up like a little measuring box there. So if you need a specific size, you can up and down on the measuring box until you get the right size that you want. But anyway, so once you have this up and you have the transform tool selected, you can right click on the object that you're transforming, and this will bring down other selection options. So you have scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective, and warp. So scale is the first one. This is just up and down, bigger, smaller. And then you have rotate, which will allow you to rotate the object. which is quite clever. But you can do that in the scale option if you go to the can you? I don't know if you can. Am I telling you wrong information here? Maybe I am. Well, it doesn't seem to want to let me do that. So, but anyway, just forget what I just said there. If you want to rotate it, click on rotate, and then you can rotate the object. Skew is you can kind of skew it, bring in the edges, make different shapes with it. This is good for perspective. So if you wanted like to make something like in perspective or going away from you or coming towards you even, you can do something like that. And this could be like a, I don't know, like a runway or something, or a road, you know. Obviously not a red road, but you get the idea. So if we go back into that tab, we have, which one are we on? Distort. No, perspective. If you go on perspective, that'll actually do the kind of the calculation for you and make it a lot easier. But if you want to do a kind of freehand, you can click on distort and just adjust each point. So what you could do is you could, like, okay, I'll just click to the other box here. I'll click the other box and say you wanted this in perspective. So you could click that, and then you click perspective, and then you want it in perspective like that, and you think, oh yeah, that's a great perspective, but my perspective is going off this way. Then you could go into the distort tool and then change these parameters here. So while you're changing these, if you notice when I move it, it goes like all over the place. If you keep your finger on shift, it will naturally keep the line. You know, it'll snap to like a right angle or a geometric like kind of line, you know. Whereas rather than just doing it by freehand all over the place, if you keep your finger on shift, it will kind of keep a good parameter and a good kind of shape. So like I'm moving this left and right, it'll snap to the line, which is quite a useful thing if you're trying to be precise. And then after perspective, you got warp, which is quite an interesting tool. You can change all the parameters and kind of, this is good for making like a flag or something. Like say for example you had like a flag and it needed to be waving or something, like wavy. You can do it with that tool. So I've just covered some basics of how the transform tool works today. There are some other options towards the bottom of the transform tool, which I'll show you now. So we've covered these ones: scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective, warp, and below here we have puppet warp and content aware scale. Don't really want to cover those yet, so I'll just go on to these ones. We've got rotate 180 degrees, so you just click that and it'll rotate it automatically for you. Rotate counterclockwise. Just click that and, oh no, rotate clockwise, sorry, and that one's counterclockwise. So rotate clockwise, rotate counterclockwise, CCW. Then you have flip horizontal, so it'll flip it kind of like horizontally and flip vertically, and it'll just do that. You can't do that with the canvases though. What a lot of people do when they first use Photoshop, they never use the transform tool. They always use the canvas. So they always go to image rotation and flip the canvas horizontally. So I've flipped the layers, but I've also flipped the canvas. So if you've got an image behind the stuff that you want to flip, the image will flip with the images. So it's best to use the transform tool to do all your specific layers. So yeah, that's about it for this video, guys. I think I've covered pretty much everything I can regarding the transform tool. Oh yeah, I was going to actually show you how maybe you could incorporate this into an image. So let me just find an image. I'll use this image here. So for example, this is just going to be a quick thing here. If you were using the transform tool or the warp tool on, say, this image here, maybe you wanted to make the mountains in the background bigger or maybe smaller or something, you can use the transform tool to do that. So let's say we'll take this peak here and we'll make it a little bit bigger. You can't do that with a transform tool. You can do it many different ways. There's not one way of doing something in Photoshop. I just have to remind you of that. So my way might necessarily not be the best way, but if you follow it, it's a decent enough way, I guess. So what we'll do is we'll zoom in. So if you want to zoom in to whatever you're doing, press Z, and it'll bring up the zoom kind of icon. So zoom in. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this out, this peak here. So we'll go to the pen tool, and then we'll draw a path around the peak. So we'll just do this quickly because I don't really want to make the video like 25 minutes long. So we'll just cut around this peak here. With the pen tool, and then we'll right click on the path. So right click, and then we'll make selection. Click OK. And now what this enables us to do is if we click Control and C and then Control and V, it has made a new layer, but what I've done is I've copied that peak. So now I can just like move it around like that. But the good thing that it's on a new layer now is that I can kind of use the scale tool. So what I want to do is I want to make these peaks bigger or maybe smaller. So we'll hit Control and T, and now it's in a transform box. Now I can make the peaks much bigger, or much smaller, like that. So if we zoom out, we have a bigger peak now. So that's just one example of how you can use the transform tool to enhance your photographs. Obviously, with a photograph like this, you don't want to enhance it too much because it's kind of pretty much perfect as it is. But you apply these different tools to whatever job you're doing. So I mean, obviously, if you wanted perspective or if you wanted the image to be more kind of like you wanted to put the focus on something more, then you can use the transform tool to do that. So yeah guys, this is just a quick tutorial. I just wanted to cover the basics of how the transform tool worked. I really hope you find it useful and you can apply it to your own projects. If you're interested, you can view all my videos on my website, which is in the link below, my website link. And on my website I've put a quick tips kind of section, which I will be updating on a daily basis. It's just kind of like going through all the different tools and how the different tools work, but it's in a written format, and I'm hoping by the end of the week I'll have that in a PDF, and it'll be available for people just to kind of like download and just go over in their own time, really. So I really appreciate you guys watching this video, and please stay tuned for more in the future.